off with a little video that we created. In the video, you're going to see some images that we collected. That was part of our presentation at the middle school. You'll also see some video from when we were teaching at the middle school, and then also a little bit of a clip that we used in the presentation. You'll also see images from the experience at the sleep clinic, and then also images of
Sleep apnea machines.
yeah. So,
My name is Gamaliel Garcia, senior at Lakeland High School.
and I'm Jared Faust, and I'm also senior at Lakeland High School.
Good clip, I like that.
Doesn't make you want to sleep.
I know. One of those hunched over bodies was
The
someone I
purpose
know.
was to wake you up.
It works,
Ready to
it
listen.
works, it works.
Okay, one of the first things that we did was our sleep survey. In our sleep survey, we questioned 100 students, and there were 7 questions in total, and we're going to take a look at the results and show you guys what the students at Lakeland High School said. One of the first questions we asked was whether or not they thought they were getting enough sleep, and the majority said no, they did not think they were getting enough sleep, which this was a big reason why we wanted to do our presentation on sleep, because we felt this was very true amongst all students, whether they're in elementary or in high school or middle school. And then we did this question asking the amount of sleep they had on average, and this kind of breaks it down. The 7 to 9 was kind of broad, and we followed up that question with a few students, and they said that they were a little confused because if they had 7 hours and like 1 minute, they would fall into that category. So a lot of people would actually have said that they were probably closer to the less than 7 category, and we'll explain the right amount later. A lot of students do attempt to binge sleep, and so we ask this question, do you sleep more on the weekends or holidays?
Yeah, everybody does what?
The big issue with this is that it does not work.
But it feels
You're right.
come on.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
We also asked the question, if school started later, would you get more sleep? And there was obvious yes question or answer to this. Very few said no, and those might be the most honest students because they're most likely the ones that know they'll probably stay up later if school started later. This is another follow-up question, asking them if they think school starts at the right time. This kind of gauges their responses. And surprisingly, a lot of students said that it does start about the right time, so this kind of contradicted what they had previously said. And then this question asked if they found it difficult to focus while they were tired. And a lot of them again said yes, which is something that we suspected. But this was another thing we were noticing as students in like our calculus class and other tougher upper level classes. We were noticing that students were yawning and even the occasional like falling asleep on their desk. And we just wanted to see how hard it was for them to focus. And so we asked this question. And then we asked them the tough question, what keeps them up at night? This was just to gauge what they're spending their time doing outside of school. And a lot of students said homework, which based on the amount of homework we take home, we think this one may be inaccurate just because we don't take that much home. And if students, we don't know which 100 students this is, it was completely anonymous.
You just wait until tomorrow.
Yeah. So maybe they're just procrastinating, and that's why they're staying up late. So we think another thing that might be big for this is social media, and we did some studies, or we found studies that showed that looking at your phone right before you're going to bed also like prolongs the sleep process. And so we thought that was interesting that that was one of the top things. And with students not getting enough sleep, it was nothing more than, well, it was definitely more than a coincidence that it was on there.
Lots of others of those.
Yeah, what were their
I'm curious
responses?
as to what the others are.
The others talked about, they were talking about farming and other like work and combinations of multiple things. And I don't know why, but a lot of them said farming, so I didn't realize we had that many farmers here in our school, but a lot of them, that was a big response. So.
Well, it was September, right? You did this way back in September, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
So
why.
it was nice out.
It was
Hunting, I could see.
harvest.
It was harvest. Yeah,
Harvest, they
that would have been a definite time not to get any sleep.
Had a lot of kids in it.
So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what they were saying.
On top of that sleep survey, we also performed a sleep experiment, and that tested 82 test subjects from Lakeland High School. They were across all 4 grade levels. And we tested reaction time versus hours of sleep. Our hypothesis was if students get the appropriate amount of sleep, then they should be getting faster reaction times because they'll be more focused and they'll be more alert. So we tested that, and we had them do a simulation on the computer, and we had them test how fast they were able to press a button when prompted to do so. So we had the students come in the computer lab in pretty large sizes actually. We were able to get like up to 30 kids at one time, and it was really quick. We were able to get them in and out in around 15 minutes. And then after completing the game, they filled out a questionnaire that asked them their age, their grade, and then their score, and then how many hours of sleep they got the previous night. And then we graphed this, and we found out that surprisingly, the students who got less than the recommended hours of sleep did better on the game than those who slept
That's
more.
what they do the night before when
Yeah,
that's.
that's actually.
Is that the theory?
Yeah, that's.
And we
I was gonna say that.
attributed this to a variety of factors. We couldn't control whether or not the students had any caffeine prior to taking the test. And we also couldn't control whether the fact that they may have been dishonest in their answer about sleep, they may have not known how much sleep they got. But we weren't able to control those things.
But you did large enough numbers that you.
What time of day had you, was
This
that
was like
during
right
lunch?
between like the lunches.
Okay,
So that could have helped too. They had food in their system, so.
So they all had eaten, they'd all eaten lunch,
So
they
it
weren't
was like
starving.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, like, or 1:30 in the afternoon.
And then we also did sleep presentations at the middle school, and this was done in close collaboration with the health and PE teachers. And we presented to 4 classes over the course of the day, and they ranged from 6 to 8 graders. And we were able to outreach to over 140 kids. The very last class I was presenting to had 50 kids in it, so that was a really, really neat experience, seeing all those young minds and being able to teach them about good sleeping habits and what happens if you don't get enough sleep.
While we were there, we also stressed the importance of just different things in the high school to look at. If you look at the binder, in our presentation portion, this is what it shows. We did steps to succeed in high school as well, because we figured that students at the middle school level would be getting ready for high school, and not only do they need good sleeping habits, but they also need good study habits and just a good stern warning about the dangers of not turning their assignments in. So
The power of zero.
we did
Wow,
10
that
little
stuck with
quick
people, didn't
steps.
That's awesome.
We did those 10 quick steps to succeed in high school, and we also stressed the importance of just getting good study habits now in middle school before they came to high school. So hopefully you see a change before we leave. We also wrote an article for the local newspaper. We spoke with Mr. Guy Thompson, and this was a little sporadic. I ran into him at Subway while I was working, and I talked to him about it, and then also at a basketball game during concessions. We did some research on sleep. We found some interesting things, especially in terms of driving. 100,000 accidents occur every year, and those are attributed to drowsiness and fatigue at the wheel. And around half of those come from younger drivers. 18 to 24, I believe, was the age. And 18-year-olds are in our high school. They are driving. And we're concerned because 18-year-olds are on the roads, they're coming to school, and they're typically exhausted. And we also found comparisons between the amount of sleep that they have gained and blood alcohol content. If they have gone 18 hours or more without sleep, they have a 0.05 comparison blood alcohol content. And then if they go 24 hours or more without sleep, it goes up to 0.1. The legal limit for driving while intoxicated is 0.08. So you can see that there is a major concern for students who are trying to pull those all-nighters to get homework done and get it in on time. So we stressed that while we were at the middle school too. And I also included personal experience about working and driving home, and how that has affected me and how I've fallen asleep or almost fallen asleep at the wheel, and how dangerous that can be. So we stress the importance there. So in writing this article, we were able to submit it via Gaggle. We worked together on it. We used Google Docs, and we were able to work together at our separate houses, and that made it really easy for us to communicate and collaborate on everything that we were doing. And we read it over, and then we submitted it. And we were hoping to see it in print sometime, but we'll have to get back with you if we do.
And then we, as also part of our senior project, did a sleep lab observation. So that entailed us filling out a job shadowing application and then emailing back and forth with a lady by the name of Nancy Weichel. And she directed us to Linda Archer, and she is the head of the sleep lab clinic in Fort Wayne at their Parkview Randalia campus. So we got an email to, originally they weren't gonna let us because they said that they only typically let one student do a job shadow at a time. But then we suddenly got the email that they accepted both of us in, so we went yesterday.
Yeah. And she just called me, she didn't say anything at all about this, so I'm surprised she didn't call and check you guys out.
So we went yesterday and we met with respiratory therapists, and they deal with home studies and sleep studies. Those are the 2 studies that are done in the sleep clinic. And then a home study is done on patients who are believed to have sleep apnea. And they basically come in and then they get a machine that monitors how much they're breathing and their oxygen levels and all that. And then they're sent back home and then they're monitored throughout the night. And then the sleep studies are actually done on site. And then people come in and then they're given more gear, I guess you could say, that monitors more things like eye movement and brain waves and all that. And then they sleep inside there, and then the results are observed and reported by the respiratory therapists, and then they're then sent to the sleep doctor.
And if you look at the back of our binder, you can see we have some examples of some of the charts that they were showing us. They actually taught us how to read some of this stuff, and we saw a healthy, like a blood rate or oxygen level here at the bottom was above 90%, and you could see that in somebody who had sleep apnea that it was dropping, and the periods where they weren't breathing. And then there was also another, this is the occurrence where it was somebody who was snoring. They didn't have sleep apnea, but you could see that they were still maintaining that oxygen level while they were sleeping, which was kind of interesting to see. Because a lot of people think that when you have sleep apnea, you have to be snoring, or if you're snoring, that you have to have sleep apnea. But it's not necessarily true. We found that quite interesting. Okay, so the survey portion, I had to create a SurveyMonkey account. That was not necessarily difficult, but we did find out some bad things about SurveyMonkey after we had done our study. I created about sleep, so you saw the questions that we asked the students. And then also I wrote an announcement, and I made that announcement prior to EDGE so that way students could take the survey. And then we did find out when collecting the results and before analyzing it that you can only get 100 results if you don't have a pro version. And so when we thought we were going to get 200 some results and we were going to be able to look at all of that, we only got those 100. And then also some of the students decided to skip some of those questions, so it kind of hindered our final product. But so that's something we would change if we got to do this again. And it was definitely a neat experience to see though what students had to say and prove some of the points that we had thought correct.
Okay, I'm just talking again about the sleep experiment, and then during the collection of the results, I had to sift through so many papers. They're all in there, all 82 of them. And then I had to enter all those manually and then figure out of an appropriate way to graph that and make it look like, to make it understandable, because I could have gone about so many different ways, and I chose that way because I felt like, because all those dots represent each individual subject, and then you can truly see the entire spectrum of how fast or how slow the reaction times are. And then on top of that, I also had to do what's known as a p-value, and that basically determines whether the test is statistically valid or not. And as you can see, it wasn't. But the steps taken to get to that point were really neat, and it was a great learning experience. And if I could change it again, I would. And then once I compiled the results, I put it together in that poster, and then I printed it. And interestingly enough, that poster was for another class. It was for my biomedical innovations class. It was for the human physiology unit. And I just figured that I could do that and then turn that in for a grade, and then also have that for my senior project.
Get more sleep.
Yeah, save me some sleep there. And we printed it, and then I also asked Ms. Severson if she could laminate it.
And that was another thing that was quite interesting is while we were at the sleep clinic, when we were looking at the charts and stuff, we saw just how what we're doing in the high school level in all of the medical interventions and biomedical interventions classes, how that's tying into what they're doing as a profession. Like we were looking at the Logger Pro stuff that we do in class, and then we compared it to the charts that we have in the back of the binder, and we were just like, this looks pretty familiar. We could probably read this if given enough time to play with the machinery. So that was something that was quite interesting as well. And as we earlier discussed, we both worked on the research together, and then also the writing, and then I did the emailing, but only one of us could do the submission portion, so.
Okay, for the sleep presentations, we first had to meet with Principal Wilkins, and we had to shoot him our idea and get his approval first before doing anything else. And then after that, we contacted the PE teachers, we emailed them and see what times they were available. We gave them a time frame, and then they gave us theirs, and then we found middle ground, and then we went with that. So we had to create a PowerPoint to be able to present to the middle schoolers, because we figured that that would be the easiest way to go about presenting that information, because sometimes the research done on sleep could be confusing or a little bit hard to understand, so we did that to simplify it for them. So we chose February 5th, 2015 to do that.
Okay, and as we talked about earlier, we were able to do the lab observation last night. We arrived there at the Randalia campus at 6:30, a little bit after, maybe 6:35, and we stayed until about 9:30. It was quite late, and so we still had other projects and stuff to get done, so we tried to get as much sleep as possible. The job shadowing application, we had to fill that out, and we had spoken to the lady at the hospital that we had already discussed. That was another interesting thing that we got to see, as we got to go into the LaGrange Hospital as well, and then we could compare that to the experience at Randalia Hospital, and it was just so much larger, and it was very intimidating. We submitted that through email as well, and we awaited the confirmation, and we received that the day before they wanted us to go, and early in the morning, and I was sitting in on the class that he was in, and I got super excited, but I couldn't say anything about it, so I had to wait until after first hour to tell him. And then again, this is where we were at, and we saw the home studies and stuff, so. We were also able to conduct an interview. It was interesting to see what they knew about sleep, and then what we were able to, we kind of taught them some stuff too, from our research, because they didn't look into like dreaming and stuff like that. Their process is just analyzing the brain patterns and stuff like that, the brain waves. But we looked at some of the different aspects of sleep and how like dreams can reveal stuff to you, and I also covered that a little bit in psychology, so other classes did compile into our final project.
And we also asked them how they got into sleep, like how they were doing the thing they were doing. And we all asked them what they all majored before doing that, and all of them had different career paths. So they didn't even originally plan on doing it. And then one of them didn't even have to do any college at all. They just did it all on the job training. So, and they work 3 days a week, and then they pick those 3 days, whatever 3 days they want.
They were 12 hours.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like a bad schedule.
No.
Yeah, they were telling us how they decided to take the weekend off, so they took the entire weekend off, and then another day, and then they just went back to work. They said it takes them about 2 hours to analyze sleep observations, so that was something, we watched them, and it was very confusing at first, because they were just highlighting different sections, and we couldn't see what the waves were at first, but then they pulled us closer and they showed us exactly what everything was, so it was definitely a neat experience.
And then the materials necessary to go about completing this entire senior project were computers, internet access, printers. The job shadowing application was probably one of the most important, I would think so, and then pens, pencils, and paper.
Of course, we're using projector right now, so you can look at the rest of the stuff. We've already covered a lot of it, so the reaction simulation that we used was the same thing as mentioned here, so.
And this was our project schedule. We did the proposal draft on August 27th, and then we did the sleep survey that weekend for around that time in September. And then we did the final proposal on the 3rd, and then the gallery walk, in which all the teachers came in and asked us about what we were doing. That was taking place during Corn School Week and homecoming. So that was an interesting time.
And then this is when we conducted our sleep experiment. We did that on the 4th of December. And then last month in January, we submitted our applications for the job shadowing program. And then we also visited Parkview LaGrange to talk a little bit more about that, and to make sure that we were sending it in the right direction. And we got some more information on that. And then the 3rd, we submitted our article to Mr. Guy Thompson. And the 5th, we did the presentations at the middle school that we talked about. And last night, we went to the lab to do the observation.
And this project has benefited a whole bunch of people. It's benefited all the middle schoolers that we reached out to, as well as their teachers, because they also learned new things that as we were presenting, they learned some new information. And anyone who's reading the LaGrange Standard and whoever subscribed to that, they have a chance of getting to know what we were doing and what all goes on in that realm of sleep. And then I had a teacher here at the high school reach out to me the day before we went to the sleep lab, and he asked me a question. So I got back to him with the answer. So I was able to help him out unexpectedly.
And I had another teacher ask me a similar question, and I was able to answer that question today. So it was definitely beneficial for them, and then also it gave us more questions to ask the respiratory therapist. The things that we thought were pretty great about this project in general was just the experience. There's a lot of things we learned, and there was a lot of things that we were able to take from what we've learned at the high school already and implement them. We also gained new knowledge about sleep, and were able to present that. And we also created some relationships with some people who are already in professions that are of interest, or at least do give us information about our project, and that definitely was interesting.
And then some problems that we ran into was timing, like having to do the sleep lab observation the day before and then having to put that in our senior presentation to talk about. That kind of caused some loss of sleep. But I really enjoyed it, and it's worth losing a little bit of sleep to have a great product like this. And also it was kind of hard, like wrangling in all the kids to get them to do things that came about. And then there was also one, I also had to throw away like 5 because they didn't even write down their score, they didn't even write down their sleep, so.
Yeah, and then with some of the students skipping questions on the survey, it was kind of frustrating because we only had those 100 results, and some of them weren't even willing to give them the time to click yes and no. Or so that's where we would make our changes. We would change the way we went about getting the high schoolers to do things. We'd almost have to walk them step by step to get through those things. And then also SurveyMonkey, I would not use that again. I would try to find something that would collect more data so we could have a better presentation for our final product. And then also our outreach to the high school students as well. We had done a little bit of talking to students as we were conducting our experiments and going over the middle school, but we just didn't think we did an effective job of presenting everything that we wanted to the high school students, and that is something that we would have wished to get presented as well. But just because they're heading in the direction of college, we wanted to help them set healthy habits as well.
Are there any questions?
I wanted to say how much sleep did you lose during this project, but I think you mentioned that a couple of times. Why sleep? What got you excited about this?
Well, at the very beginning, we were assigned an activity to write down things that we were interested in. And then the first, of course, was soccer. We both like to play soccer. And then the second one was sleep. So we didn't want to do soccer because we felt like a lot of people were heading in that direction of sports and doing things with sports. So we wanted to go against all that and then do something that hadn't been done yet.
Yeah, and around the time that we were coming up with an idea, I had heard something about the American Pediatrician Association coming out with a new estimated sleep schedule, and that students should be getting around 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep. And so that's another thing that kind of sparked our interest. And then we were able to rationalize it by watching students fall asleep in class. And saying, there's a need for somebody to do some teaching, so.
Now, they already changed their start time.
As well as schools change start time for high school.
Yeah, and that was one thing that we learned from the respiratory therapists. They were talking about a conference they had just gone to, and that conference was actually suggesting the change in the start time of school, so.
I think the thing holding it back is usually sports, the tradition of when sports
Yeah.
starts, so that'll be the interesting thing with soccer and sleeping
Yeah.
together.
Which is interesting, because a lot of kids say, well, then we wouldn't get out of sports practice till such and such a time. I'm like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't have to.
You wouldn't have to get up as early. Now, I know from the board meeting earlier this week, Andy, that you're interested in the medical field.
Yes.
What are you interested in?
My plans are to attend IU Bloomington, and I will be majoring in business and accounting. And then I hopefully will be attending law school there as well, so. Some Purdue fans in the background may not be appreciative.
Go IU.
Great school.
You were saying you wish you could have more high school outreach. Have you thought at all about we still have a few months in the year?
Yeah,
Even though you seem to have finished a ton of things that you did, were there any thoughts of how you could do that better or get some of that word out before your class leaves for college?
yeah, part of our original proposal was to create PSAs. And then during our committee meeting where they approved our ideas, they said that wasn't enough, which was a good stressor. It kind of caused us to think outside the box. And so I think as we were adding things to the project, we kind of let that part go. And so that's why I think we probably should have had more of an impact on the students here at the high school. So there is still time, maybe we could still do it, but.
Have you changed any of your own habits since you've done all this research?
I've definitely been more vigilant, like, I've caught myself doing those things that you're not supposed to do. I'm like, whoa, time to get focused, time to set some time away from the phones and get some work done.
That'll be good for college.
Yeah, and then like the sleep producing hormone that is suppressed by looking at your phone when you're trying to go to bed at night. I've been taking note of that, and I've been trying to flip lights away from me while I'm trying to sleep so that I know artificial lights can cause me to lose sleep. So.
And one of the most interesting things I learned while at the sleep lab is that you go through the stages of sleep, light sleep, medium sleep, and then like deep REM sleep, multiple times throughout the night. So like on the charts they have when you go into REM sleep, and then you could clearly see it starts and then it stops and then starts again, and that it gets longer as the night goes on. That's probably one of the coolest things that I saw.
And then people who were extremely tired, like they would fall asleep and you could see where they fell asleep and they would go straight into REM. And then,
Yeah, because it usually takes, on a normal night, it usually takes around an hour and a half to get to REM sleep for the first time, and then it's usually in little intervals, so.
When you spoke to the middle schoolers, how did you think they listened? Did they take it seriously? Do you think you made an impact on them?
Yeah, I think we really made an impact, especially when we talked about the high school thing, because like, especially to 8th graders, that was our first class of the day, and I think they were kind of like interested in what we had to say, having been gone, well, through almost 4 years now. But yeah, I think that the tips we gave them that they'll watch out for and hopefully change.
And the students were as expected. They were a little rowdy, so that's kind of the reason we came up with the idea of adding the points to survive high school, just because we didn't want to bore them to sleep, I guess, with all of the information on sleep. So by adding that little aspect or whatever, it kind of changed their focus, and they could take what we learned, and then they could also take the hints to do better in high school.
And we also had an alternative date set up because that was during a week where we didn't know if we were going to be in school the next day or not. So, and we actually had a 2-hour delay that day. So that kind of played a role.
Yeah, students were able to ask us questions, and some of them were just a little bit about sports and how we manage doing sports and maintaining our grades.
Because that's the one thing that they told us is that how are they going to be able to do sports and then homework and then sleep. So
major thing that we pushed was not procrastinate.
Right, Joe?
Good job, guys.